Well, we got trouble, my friends, right here in River City, with a capital T, and that rhymes with B, and that stands for bandwagons, which we're talking about here in a moment on Elevate Ordinary. Well, hello, and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
And I'm Teresa Grodi.
And we're back with another conversation about the daily pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. And we're really grateful that you're back with us for another one of these conversations. Today we're talking about bandwagons.
Monorail.
Monorail. And we're going to cram in as many pop culture references and musical theater references as we can. You can point those out in the comments. But before we get into today's topic, I want to tell you a bit about one particular bandwagon that you should jump on as soon as you possibly can, and that is the AWAKEN Nation. We are an apostolate trying to bring truth through beauty, through beautiful media. And if you'd like to be part of this mission, please go to awakencatholic.org/donate and jump on this bandwagon. And another bandwagon you can jump on is our app. If you go to theawakenapp.io, or look it up in your favorite app store, Google Play, Apple App Store, those kind of places. You can download it. A lot of cool content there. It's the best way to follow AWAKEN Catholic content, but also we've got a growing group there, a community of people like yourself who are living out the faith, discussing the topics, discussing the shows, interacting with hosts and other members of the AWAKEN Nation. So check that out there. And finally, our sponsor today is the following.
Have you ever dreamed of visiting Paris in the fall? Seeing the beautiful Eiffel Tower lit up by a sunset, visiting and venerating holy locations of the Sister Saints of France in Lisieux, Paris, Lourdes, and more. This fall 2021, join select international tours with Claire Swinarski and Catherine Whitaker, along with a host of other powerful Catholic women, on a once-in-a-lifetime Seine River cruise pilgrimage in France. Join our friends at Select International Tours and Cruises with over 34 years of experience. They are the perfect company to help you experience pilgrimage. To learn more, visit selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. Bon voyage!
Thank you, Select Tours. Okay, so here we are. Today we're going to talk about bandwagons, Teresa.
Yeah.
Why do you want to talk about bandwagons anyway? Huh?
I don't know. I live in this world.
I'm on. This is your bandwagon. I just jumped on. So tell me where we're going. Where's this thing headed?
So I wanted to talk today, in light of our episode on gossip, this episode will pair well with your fine. I can't make jokes.
Like a fine wine. Yes.
I'm not one of those people who's capable to make witty jokes. Well, in light of our episode on gossip, I thought it would be great to continue talking about freedom and free will, freedom and the bandwagon. So in my mind, we like to talk about virtue. And in my mind, bandwagons are the height of social imprudence. Imprudence. And we love talking about prudence here.
Great term, social imprudence. Yeah.
So what are bandwagons? Bandwagons are...
They're wagons that have bands on them.
Literally.
That's pretty straightforward, Teresa.
So it started in American politics. You would have a wagon with a band on it, and it would come through the town. Like, this is before TV and the news and social media and things like this.
So fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only way you would know about a political candidate would be if they would parade through their town, or, signs and buttons and things. Yeah. And so people would literally jump on the wagon with the band on it for the political campaign person to show that they were in solidarity with the person, and then to also be on the winning ticket when that person won. You again, we don't have the news, we don't have pictures, we don't have social media. You remember seeing that person on the winning politician's bandwagon.
I'm with the band. Yeah, just not a big deal. I'm with the band. Yeah.
Now this has kind of become a term for any time that you jump on a moving movement.
A movement, yeah.
I guess.
In a movement.
Yeah. How the turntables have turned. So, to start this episode, well, I guess, just talking about we talk about prudence, we talk about personal prudence, but it really occurred to me that, like, bandwagons are social imprudence. So it's, and I can't, like, I don't want to get, like, political. But this is 2021. And we lived through 2020.
So many bands.
There are just
so many wagons.
There are so many examples, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, that you can think of in your brain that occurred in 2020, where it seemed like whatever the movement was garnering bodies, you know, garnering people, garnering likes, garnering shares, garnering support. So I wanted to talk about what the church teaches about freedom and people who try to use and abuse your freedom. Well,
let's talk just a little bit more about what an arresting image, you know, the bandwagons. We would use that term, but I love thinking back through the history of it, because so if we analyze that situation, again, when we're talking about bandwagons, what are we focusing on? What is the term, the idiom really getting at? And what it's getting at is, again, not just a movement, not just that you ascribe to a certain idea or a party or a platform, but that party or platform is appealing to your emotion to get you to jump on this moving thing that you're sort of carried away with, whether or not you really thought it through, whether or not you really made a prudent, thoughtful, intentional decision. It's encouraged you to leap before you look, so to speak, to jump on the bandwagon, and then you may not really realize till later that, wow, I shouldn't have gotten on that. This has gotten me, you know, it got me all upset, or it got me maybe agreeing to things or supporting things or believing things that I really had no business doing. That's kind of the point here, is that it's using, I mean, we think about it in terms of like logic and fallacies. The appeal to emotion, that's precisely what a bandwagon is. This appeal to your emotion to jump on this moving thing before you've really thought it through.
Like, where is this ending? You know, actually, so you started the episode with a song from the Music Man.
You're going to give it away.
Oh. sorry. Which is all, I mean, that whole thing is he is creating a bandwagon to be able to sell band instruments
yes.
To this town, and then hijack it out of the town when they realize that there's no band, there's no instruments. And spoiler alert.
You ruined it. You know, and the other thing that we might say about this idea of bandwagons, because when you look into idioms, when you look into old maxims or old terms, sometimes you discover so much truth just in the definition. Again, part of the reason why bandwagons are interesting is because we do want to be part of the band. That's how that movie or the show actually ends. He admits to the kid, I always think there's a band, kid. You know, like he recognizes even in himself that everybody wants to be part of the band. You want to be with the band. And we're social creatures. We do want community. We want fraternity. And so, again, the problem with bandwagons is that they use our, not just appeal to our emotion in terms of the issue at hand, but also an appeal to our desire to be part of a tribe, part of a group, part of a movement. We want that. And that's not necessarily a bad impulse, but it's so easily abused.
And I think a lot of times, especially with marketing and especially with mass movements like we see today, or social media movements like we see today, whoever is behind them, you know, whatever marketing company is, they are actively trying to get you to not think about all the end results, or all the how did this get here, what is it doing, what's its goal, where's the money going, where's the, you know, they're trying to get you to just be like, you are on the right side. People who love their children do this thing. It's a direct appeal to emotion.
And it's so easier for us to think about, okay, well, those companies out there, or those, you know, those corrupt politicians out there that are trying to use these appeals to emotion to get us to jump on their bandwagon. But we have to take a step back and recognize that this is an impulse for all of us. Okay, this is an impulse, well, certainly for those kinds of people, but, you know, for we who do have causes we really sincerely believe in. Here at AWAKEN Catholic, you know, as Catholics, as Christians, we have causes, we have the gospel we want to share. And there is always this impulse to use slimy means, you know, or to overstate our case, or to appeal to the emotion purely. And even if it's for a good cause, that's the thing here, that's the trick. Even if it's for a good cause, it doesn't work. You can't strong arm someone into believing the gospel, nor can you cajole them or bully them into it out of fear, or merely appeal to kind of a short-term immediate desire. We have to be bringing people, we have to be respecting their freedom, and for lots of reasons. And I think that's one of the things you're going to get to, is that they're especially, well, no, if you have a message or a movement or something that you want to invite people to, we have to be respecting people's freedom.
Yeah, as a historian,
Yes.
documentaries are like the bane of my existence.
Yes.
Sure, some documentaries can be done very well with a submissiveness to the truth. But when I look at modern documentaries, all I can see is that at the beginning of the documentary, they just get you in this emotional frenzy. Like, if this thing continues to occur, life as we know it will cease to exist in the next generation or for our children's generation. And then, which it may be true. It may, whatever this thing is, it may be true. But then when you get yourself all worked up in this, like, I'm so scared, I don't know what to do, this is all going to end, and this is horrible. Well, then they can present any answer to you that they want, regardless of whether or not it makes sense. And I'm actually going to call out a documentary here because this is the first time I, as a historian, realized this. I watched, what's that Al Gore documentary?
Oh, I never watched it. The climate change
Inconvenient Truth. Okay. So I just want to say as a preface, I am a huge soil health, earth health person. And we're going to actually do an episode on that in the future. So I'm not somebody
who isn't
concerned about things that may be happening and are happening.
But you care about crappy arguments.
But what I remember is that when I watched this episode, I bought a bunch of the light bulbs that he talked about. Like, these light bulbs will reduce your carbon footprint, you know, like there were visuals and things like that. And I bought a bunch of these light bulbs because I'm like, well, it'll also reduce the cost in my parents' house, and my parents could use that. And then they came in the mail, and on the side of this light bulb that I went to his website and purchased this light bulb off of his website, I look at the side of the light bulb and it says, do not dispose in the trash. It needs to be properly recycled because it contains mercury. And I'm like, wait a second. Is anyone going to do that? And then, like, what are the effects of mercury? You're going to put people put mercury in the trash bins all the time. They put these spiral light bulbs in the trash bins all the time. So what's the effect of mercury in the soil, in the water, in like, and I was just like, I've just been had. Like, it was just this huge revelation of like, he got me to buy these light bulbs, and these light bulbs are kind of terrible for the environment because no one's going to take them to Home Depot to recycle them. They're all going to go in the trash. So anyway, sorry, let's move on to the Catechism. So like I said at the beginning, this episode pairs really well with our gossip episode. In the gossip episode, we went to the Catechism and learned that our interior life, our thoughts, that, you know, God creates us with an interior life and we have interior thoughts, but that those thoughts have to be revealed by us. No one can take them from us. No one can read them. They have to be revealed by our body language and by our words. And that revelation of our interior life, what makes us human, what makes us created in the image and likeness of God, is very, very precious. So I would encourage you, if you haven't seen the gossip episode, we'll link it below. Just go watch it. It pairs well with this.
But this is a similar thing here, where it's that aspect of your interior life, your free will, is such a precious thing, and there are deep problems when we try to override someone else's will, their rationality, their reason, their willing, because of the preciousness of that interior life.
Okay, so the Catechism says that God created man a rational being, conferring on him the dignity of a person who can initiate and control his own actions. God willed that man should be left in the hand of his own counsel. Man is rational, and therefore, like God, he is created with free will and is master over his own acts. Freedom is the power, rooted in reason and will, to act or to not act, to do this or that, and so to perform deliberate actions on one's own responsibility. By free will, one shapes one's own life. And so, similar to your interior life, no one can take your freedom from you, your freedom to make a choice for or against something.
They can take your land. They can take your women. But they can never take your freedom. Sorry, we have to get all the movie references in.
Well, I feel like we need a special prize for the person who can write the most both conscious references and subconscious references. I'm sure I make subconscious references all the time to popular culture.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Cardinal Serra, I love this book, The Power of Silence by Cardinal Serra. Cardinal Serra says, chattering, the tendency to externalize all the treasures of the soul by expressing them, is supremely harmful to the spiritual life. Carried away toward the exterior by his need to say everything, the chatterer cannot help being far from God, superficial, and incapable of any profound activity. That's like my examination of conscience right there. I'm sorry, I'm an extrovert. I think out loud. So I am definitely a chatterer, and I need to be really careful about that. But what the Catechism and what Cardinal Serra are saying, that you don't have to give away the treasures of the soul. You don't have to throw pearl before swine. And what is swine? You know, going back to our gossip episode, what is swine? People who don't respect your dignity, who don't respect your freedom to make a decision, and people who, you know, want a body count, want a like count. They want your social security number. They want you to exist in the system. And they don't really care about you, your dignity, or your free will.
Yeah, we have this impulse nowadays to feel like we have to have an opinion on issues that we don't know nothing about. Yeah. And so we pick up on a news source or a headline that happens to fit, you know, maybe the party or the group, the social group that we're a part of, and we run with that. When really, the prudent thing would be to say, you know, I don't have an opinion on this issue. I mean, you feel free to educate me, but I don't know enough about it to have an opinion, and that's a good thing. It's like being in an argument when somebody asks you a question and you actually don't know. The wrong thing to do is to double down and try to make it up as you go along, or to pretend like you do know. No, say, yeah, you're right. That's a good question. I don't know. I'll look that up. I'll come back to you. But all the pressure in social media, all the pressure in the media nowadays, and the pressure in kind of a polarized society that gravitates toward there being two opposite extreme angry poles on any issue, is to try to force everybody. You may not be in the middle. You may not be without an opinion. You have to be on one bandwagon or the other. And again, part of the point of the freedom here is that no, you simply do not, and you ought not, unless there's a good reason to. You ought to stay off the bandwagon unless you prudently think that this is a right thing to believe and a right thing to be a part of.
I intended to bring That Hideous Strength to quote. That Hideous Strength is the third in the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy, the third book. And he has a quote about the necessity of keeping a far left and a far right always at odds with one another. Yeah. And I was thinking about that in terms of this bandwagon issue, because if you can keep people in two different camps who really, really, really then hate each other. Yeah. Are you looking it up right now?
I think I got it here.
Oh my goodness. Now imagine the woman who's saying this, okay? The woman who's saying this. Yes. I'm going to say it now. All the people out there are going to know what she looks like. So do you remember the movie Matilda with the Trudge Bowl? The Trudge Bowl?
Oh, me?
No? Anyone? Okay, so this is like the woman. This is the woman who's saying, well, honey, they can post something.
Well, imagine her, and if you don't imagine her, this is one of the bad people in this book.
She's the head of the police force.
But she's talking to this gullible young man who's being enticed into a bandwagon, a pretty evil bandwagon. And she remarks to him, "Why, you fool, it's the educated reader." He had just objected that, oh, the educated readers of these newspapers won't be able to be fooled by this. And she retorts, "Oh, you fool, it's the educated reader who can be gulled. All our difficulty comes with the others. When did you meet a workman who believes the papers? He takes it for granted that they're all propaganda and skips the leading articles. He buys his paper for the football results and the little paragraphs about girls falling out of windows and corpses found in Mayfair flats. He is our problem. We have to recondition him. But the educated public, the people who read the highbrow weeklies, don't need reconditioning. They're all right already. They'll believe anything." And I just realized that didn't have the full
doesn't.
To the right.
I know exactly what quote. Yeah.
It comes right before it, I think. But the point is that if you're caught up in the media, you may think yourself above the influence, but it's all a bunch of competing bandwagons.
Yeah.
You know, it is precisely the person who's unplugged from all that, who's the person who can stand back and see that oh, it's all a bunch of bandwagons. The left, the right, the conservatives, the liberals, it's all a bunch of bandwagons. And that you need to have this bit of space to stand back in your place of freedom, evaluate and really think through and really have the freedom not to have an opinion until and unless you close on something that's true and good and beautiful.
Yeah, and actually too, just like accepting a first date. Okay. So I used to tell women in college, like when I used to talk to women in college, that it's okay to say no to, you don't have to give a guy a try if there's already like red flags that you can see. But similarly, like when you take that first step and jump on the bandwagon, it is hard. It is hard to get off. Because in order to get off, you have to say, I was really wrong and I made a really bad decision. And you're going to have to hear all the I told you so's and the looks from the people who were quote unquote right, you know? And so it is so important. It's so important to think before you jump on that bandwagon.
You. Yeah, you. You know you've always wanted to go to Paris. Well, now's your chance. If you go with Select International Tours, the sponsor of today's Awaken Catholic Show episode, you can join Claire Swinarski from the Catholic Feminist podcast, as well as author and speaker Catherine Whitaker, along with a host of other powerful Catholic women, on a once-in-a-lifetime Seine River cruise pilgrimage in France. Visit and venerate the sister saints of France in Lisieux, Paris, Lourdes, and more. Sacre bleu! Learn more by visiting selectinternationaltours.com/awaken.
Oh, there's so many points here. I mean, that part of the issue there, I mean, a term that goes along with that is this notion of confirmation bias, that when we've already made an investment, or investment bias, there's a number of terms connected here, but when we've already gotten on a bandwagon, we've made an investment of time or money or effort in a person or a thing or a movement, we then have a different battle, because now the temptation is, well, we need to prove ourselves that it was a good idea. And then the deeper we go, the more, especially if we recognize there's some problems there, we fight this internal battle of trying to double down on what we jumped onto, because otherwise we have to do the harder thing of admitting maybe it wasn't a good idea to jump on this bandwagon before I was sure of it.
Yeah. So this brings us to the question, which I wrote down. How do we know what's right, what's an act of courage, and how do we know what's a bandwagon? You know, so how do you discern that in your daily life? And I think just first and foremost, before I get into some more nitty gritty, is just that the church encourages us to ask questions. The church encourages us to seek truth. So I think sometimes people think that the church is a place simply of doctrines and no's and of hard, you know, like, you can't be Catholic if you're this, which may be true, but it's not true in an arbitrary sense. So our tradition goes back 2,000 years plus, you know, into Jewish academia, I guess, if there was academia back then, and even into Greek and secular thinking. So something that appealed to me as a historian when I had my encounter with Christ, which came before my intellectual conversion to Catholicism, was that I was a 20-year-old and I thought I knew everything. And then I encountered this church that had this intellectual tradition where they played devil's advocate to all of the questions. Is homosexuality okay? Is abortion okay? Is, you know, that's another one, like marrying multiple people okay? You know, like they asked these questions and they asked them hard, every angle. And then that particular generation handed it over to the next generation who continued to pummel the truth, to make the truth stand.
Yeah.
And this was a tradition that I was now standing on. So the church, like the Catechism is amazing, but the Catechism is, it's freedom in thought. It's not a set simply of rules, but it's freedom in thought. You know, you're not going to read the Catechism and come out feeling like I've just been told what to think. You're going to think to yourself, I didn't realize I could think so broadly. I didn't realize that the truth was so big and beautiful and encompassing and like familiar to me, familiar to like my interior life. So I would encourage owning a copy of the Catechism and asking good questions, asking questions the next time someone wants you to join a cause. And I think your conscience will reveal to you the kind of questions, the little nagging question that you should ask.
This was a big topic for me. Sort of my adult conversion was precisely, can I ask the church questions? Is that what the church wants? Is that as Catholics, does the church stand up to scrutiny? And that's, again, as you said, the church, our Lord and in his church does not want it to be a bandwagon. Christianity is not to be a bandwagon. To be Catholic is not to be a bandwagon. That is to say, it's not to be a matter of our mere emotion. It is not a matter of something that we can just kind of strong arm people into, or scare them into, or lure them into with carrots. That it has to be a matter of their personal decision. That precious personal decision to trust in Christ and to abide by his church and to live life following him. That has to be a matter of decision. And the church, again, the more you dig into it, I was thinking about Aquinas. If you read the Summa Theologica or his works, his whole format is to take a topic and then to line up all the very best arguments he can think of or find. And he would work with students at the time, like they'd line up all the arguments, whatever. And then he would give a response, and then he would show what a great thinker or predecessor had thought about the topic, and then he would respond to each of the objections. And so it was always this dialogue with the devil's advocate. It was always a dialogue with the best opinions.
We've talked in the past about steel manning the argument instead of straw manning the argument. Don't pick the weakest part of the person's argument. Pick the best part of the person's argument and strengthen it even better than they do, and then ask all your questions.
One of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Merton, and I've read it before here, but he writes, "The arguments of religious men are so often insincere, and their insincerity is proportionate to their anger. Why do we get angry about what we believe? Because we do not really believe it. Or else what we pretend to be defending as the truth is really our own self-esteem. A man of sincerity is less interested in defending the truth than in stating it clearly, for he thinks that if the truth be clearly seen, it can very well take care of itself." I love that quote for a bunch of different reasons. But in this context, what I love about it is precisely that the way that if we're thinking about ourselves now in terms of the way we might be tempted to try to pull people onto a bandwagon, or that it's not just a matter of whether that bandwagon turns out to be something wrong or problematic. It's that even if nothing bad happens, someone jumps on a bandwagon, they get behind a new product or a new thing, it turns out fine perhaps. But that person, the act of being pulled into something by your passion without your reason, that's a problem. Because then you haven't decided it. It hasn't been internalized. It's not a decision you've made that becomes part of your psycho-spiritual reality, something that you've decided, part of your moral life, part of your walk with the Lord. You've just been pulled into something. And in fact, I would say that you've maybe robbed that person. I mean, think about if we scare someone into the faith, or into believing truth, or if I merely scare my children into, believing some truth about the world that I'm trying to teach them. Well, I've robbed them of the experience of seeing and accepting and choosing to accept that truth. And I've also trained them in vice. Anytime we entice someone or scare someone into accepting something, we've trained them to be people of passion rather than people of prudence. People who are pulled along by their fear or their desire, rather than people who make decisions, who evaluate reasonably and then make decisions. And the problem is, even if today we use fear or desire to get someone to go along with something that we may think is right, the problem is tomorrow they are more people of passion. They are less virtuous people, and so tomorrow they could swing the other direction. We have to, the way that we operate in terms of our own discernment and in what we're trying to encourage other people to do or to think always has to be a growth in freedom. That is to say, a growth in virtue. We're encouraging them to be people of prudence, that is, people of reason and intentionality and decision, rather than people who are simply pulled or pushed along by fear or desire.
Yeah, the Catechism says human freedom is a force for growth and maturity in truth and goodness. It attains its freedom attains its perfection when it's directed towards God, our beatitude. So something that was probably, aside from the Bible and the Catechism, was probably the most beneficial thing for me to learn in my Christian life. And I think that this is pretty universal when you learn this particular practice, but it's called the Discernment of Spirits. It was first propagated by St. Ignatius of Loyola, but I think that they're universal truths, like people had.
Yeah, he was tapping into some, just how our minds work and how, and actually, it's a good point. He was really tapping into something, for instance, that the kind of stuff that Andrew Reinhardt's talking about over on his show, which is that, we are whole integrated beings. Our mind, our spirit, our body, our emotions, it's all part of one package, and we have to be looking at the whole thing. And the discernment of spirits is precisely, the practice of recognizing these the movements of the heart, and how do we interpret those? How do we discern them?
How do we discern the voice of the Holy Spirit? How do we discern the temptations of the devil on a daily, throughout your life kind of basis? And when he first discovered this, he was kind of like a knight-ish. He wanted to go off and get glory and fight in wars, and he dreamed of this one woman he could never attain because she was way out of his league, and back then that mattered. And he ended up getting his leg blown off by a cannonball in war. And so while he was recuperating, the place that he was recuperating in had a large library. And at first he grabbed a bunch of novels, short story things, and he loved reading them. But he realized after he finished reading them, he would feel empty and lonely and not fulfilled. But there were also the lives of the saints in that library. And when he would pick up the lives of the saints, he would read them and feel great reading them, just like he did with the novels. But afterwards, they were sustaining, and they really bolstered him up and made him feel elevated for a long term. And he started to recognize, maybe I shouldn't be reading these novels. Maybe I should be reading this. And so the Discernment of Spirits kind of builds off of this, discerning the fruit of the current spirit. When I first had my conversion, I came across this story about this little girl mystic. Okay, so a mystic is someone who experiences a non-normal religious experience. So I study Marian apparitions. So that means full body, Mary appears to you as you're sitting here to me, and maybe I could touch her, or she's speaking to me and it's like another person is there. But this girl experienced interior locutions. So during prayer, she would hear voices that were not hers. And she would hear the voice of Jesus, Mary, and the devil. And an adult was asking, I think it was a priest, but I'm not positive, was asking her, what does Mary sound like? How old does she sound? What kind of a man does Jesus sound like? Does he have a gruff voice? And she's like, they all kind of sound the same. And the person was like, well, how do you tell the difference between the voices of Jesus and Mary and of Satan? And she said, well, when Jesus and Mary speak, I feel like I want to do what they're asking of me, but that I'm free and I have peace, and I'm free. I'm free to do what they ask me to do, or I'm free not to do it. And she said, when the voice of Satan speaks, I feel very anxious, I have to do this thing right now. I have to do it, and I don't have even time to pray. And so I've kept that in my mind ever since I heard it, years and years and years ago, that even if I don't have time to pray about this, then I'm not going to do it. Even if it's a good thing, even if it's a cause that I'm behind, or something I want to see eradicated, or something I want to see, brought about. If this person's coming to me to get me to do this happens a lot at the checkout counter at grocery stores. The person asks you, do you want to donate $1 to XYZ fund? And it's really embarrassing to say no, but I'm I don't know where this money goes. This is a very large corporation that's asking me to donate, every single person here to donate $1. Where is this going? And it's hard to say no, but it's if I don't have time to inform myself about this place and to pray about it, maybe we want to give to some other charities instead. Then it's not the thing for me, And I think that anxiety is just a real keystone, in terms of your spiritual life. When you have anxiety, I have to do it right now. If I don't do it right now, I'm not being courageous. That is a sure sign that you need to stop and you need to pray And if you don't have time to pray, then by golly, that's not the thing that you're supposed to do.
At least for now. Yeah, and that's such a important point here. Again, casting this in just in terms of the virtues again, that there always needs to be this return. We've talked through the virtues. There always needs to be this return to prudence, because prudence is the portal, it's the opening, it's the bearer of all of the virtuous life, the moral life. All virtues pass through the portal of prudence. You mentioned earlier, oftentimes in the moment, faced with a bandwagon, sometimes our desire to be courageous is engaged. Like, oh, there's this cause, there's this evil that needs to be stopped, or there's this good that needs to be done. And so it's appealing to good emotions in us. But the thing is, again, I got the book on the table here, Joseph Pieper in the Cardinal Virtues. He makes a strong point about how the other virtues depend on prudence and justice, and particularly fortitude. Fortitude or courage cannot be a virtue unless it's founded on prudence. That is to say, courage, it must be courage in service of the right thing. So simply, and there's lots of people who don't have a lot of fear, who are ready to jump in the battle at a moment's notice. That doesn't mean they're prudent. That doesn't mean they're virtuous. They have to first be people who stand back and think, is this the right cause? Is this the right time and place for this effort? You have to be a person, a thinking, a rational, reasonable person, and you have to make a conscious decision. Yeah, this is the thing. This is the battle. This is the moment. This is the time, and I'm going to do it. But simply to be pulled in by your emotion, it may feel like courage, but you may realize after the fact that, I was just pulled onto another bandwagon here.
Yeah, actually, so this may be too controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't know.
Controversy alert. Controversy alert.
So I study Marian apparitions, and a lot of times I find impure practices and bandwagony things when people are trying to force other people to follow Our Lady's messages or do the things that Our Lady says.
Oh, there's lots of bandwagons in the church. There's bandwagons all throughout the church. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
okay, I guess
totally.
It wasn't as controversial as I thought, so we're good.
No,
We're good.
it's a big, important topic that the church is full of bandwagons. We're probably on many of them. We listening, we probably have pulled other people onto them because it's this natural desire for humans. Like when you get on a bandwagon, part of the way that you make yourself feel better about that perhaps hasty decision is to pull other people on there with you. You know?
And it's so sad to see Catholics divided. It's so sad because you lose a lot of ground in things that matter when other Catholics hate you because they think you one thing or another about you. So the bandwagons they're so divisive and they're so counterintuitive or counterproductive, especially for Christians. So did we miss? So I do just want to end by saying very forcefully that you are free to say no. When someone asks for your opinion on something, when somebody wants you to choose a side, you are free to say no, or I don't know. And honestly, I'm just not going to answer you right now or whatever. There's no, what you doing on your phone there, babe?
I'm looking up a quote, man.
So
yeah, you're free. You're free. Yeah. And that's the thing, again, whether we're thinking about somebody else, like if we, again, a child or a spouse or a friend that we're trying to share some truth with, something we believe, or whether we're, in terms of ourselves, we have to recognize that the decision today to remain prudent, that is to remain reasonable and intentional, and to not be pulled onto a bandwagon, to not jump in before we're sure, to not simply be pulled or pushed around by fear or desire, but to be people of reason and people of intentionality and decision. Even if today I make one decision and tomorrow I get some more information and I maybe go back on that decision, or I decide to, yes, I'm gonna get involved with this thing. The point is today I need to grow in virtue, and that means I have to remain prudent. I can't be growing the habit of simply being pushed or pulled around by whomever is able to. Whoever is able to prick my emotion and my passion in the right way.
whom isn't really even a word.
I know one is right, but I don't know which. Yeah. Well, I think the wagon has come to the end of the line. We'll revisit these in many ways because, again, there's so much here. There's doctrine, there's prejudice, there's passion, virtue. There's a lot going on in this, and we live in a world that trades in bandwagons and slogans, and we all are constantly in a battle of discernment over this stuff. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, on bandwagons and, how to discern them and how to kind of keep your head above water and proceed through life carefully and to help the people around us to become, people of prudence, people of reason. Yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments in the app. Talk to us in the app. We'll see you over there. As I said at the beginning, if you like what we're doing here at Awaken Catholic or on this show, Elevate Ordinary, please go to awakencatholic.org/donate and become a member, a partner in this mission, becoming part of the Awaken Nation, the best and only bandwagon that you should jump on in without even thinking about it. And also download the app, the AWAKENapp.io, or download it from your favorite app store. That's the best way to follow Awaken Catholic content, interact with the hosts and other members. And Teresa has something she wants to say?
No, it was just a daydream.
Oh. Next time, bandwagons of the mind is what we're going to be talking about. No, we thank you again for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary, sharing this conversation about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. And if you are part of the Awaken Nation, maybe you'll get a bonus episode because Teresa really has something that she wants to say, but maybe it'll come after the camera's turned off. Have a good day, and we'll see you next week. God bless.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.